Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to another episode of Rimshots with Sean right here on the Rock Rage Radio Network. And I have a gentleman that I think needs no introduction, but his new project may, because it's going to set some people on their ears here. I have Ronnie Younkins from, what's the name of your band, sir? Which I think is a great name.
The Blues Vultures.
Love it. So, thank you for doing this, by the way.
Thank you.
So you had a long run in a band. We'll talk about that maybe in a little bit, but you had a long run in another band. And then what's it like, I guess, putting another project together? And I don't know if starting from scratch is the right word, but I mean, you're essentially starting again. What's that like for a veteran like yourself?
Well, it's exciting. It's a challenge. It's a work in progress, and it is starting at the bottom. Really, it is, and that's okay by me, because for me, I just, like the name dictates, Blues Vultures. I pick apart the blues, and I put it back out in rock and roll, because I felt it got so lost in the '80s, and the band that I was in was somehow got into that whole '80s thing, even though we were like 10 years older than most of the guys from those bands. But we got lumped into that whole '80s thing. And by the end of the '80s, I was just, my head was spinning from music that I didn't understand anymore. So I went back to Howlin' Wolf, Muddy Waters, and just played those songs like Spoonful, like Hoochie Coochie Man, and I had to. Howlin' Wolf is like one of my favorite singers, and so I had to go back to that and start all over again. And then, of course, rock and roll with Chuck, and then we would play some songs by the Beatles and the Stones, of course, but those were the songs I started with, which I absorbed those, and then I let it sit, and I come up with riffs and song ideas that created 3 of the CDs that the Blues Vultures have. The first one's called Cheap Guitars and Honky Tonk Bars. The second one's called Pick to the Bone. And the most recent, it's been out for 3 weeks and a couple days. It's called You Can't Ruffle My Feathers.
So I listened to, and first off, I want to give a shout out to Sean that does the Laughing Monkey podcast, because he connected us, and I appreciate that. And I'm a musician, and I know that a big part of what musicians do is networking. And so, do you figure you're going to be able to draw on your network that you've been able to build over the years to push this out, or are you just going to take a new kind of way of doing things with what's out there, Ronnie?
I'm kind of old school, where I believe that we go out and play, and
yep.
A very social media kind of guy. It's hard for me to be that transparent. I've never been. Now I know people tell me that I have to be, but I just remember back in the '70s, when I'd go see all these great bands, I didn't know that much about them. So the mystique was there. I'd go see Aerosmith 100 times, and I didn't know very much about Joe Perry or Brad Whitford, other than seeing them live and maybe seeing an article in Hit Parader or Cream magazine, which then I would like totally focus on those pictures and the article. And I just think that for me, I don't know. It's very hard, like I just said, to be that transparent in social media. And I would rather spend my time learning new guitar riffs, or trying to make up a new song, or, God, I'm still at learning Jimi Hendrix licks. I mean, what a great guitar player to be 27 years old and created all that great music and innovate the guitar the way that he did. So, that's just the way I feel, and that's the way that I go about these things. For me, it's just playing live and doing these podcasts and talking with uh, guys like you, musicians, and the, Sean who introduced me to you, which I'm very grateful for. So I think these podcasts are great, and I'm grateful for them. But for me to be on a Facebook page every day, I don't really I don't have the time. I have young children, um, and they need my attention too through the day, and my attention goes to them and to music, and that's just the way I operate. That's all. It's just a
So
simple.
you sent me the links to the music, and I had to listen to it, and I was hearing a bunch of things. I was certainly hearing a little bit of a Stones. Oh, sorry, there we've got a an emergency broadcast network there, but so I heard some Stones, I heard some Aerosmith, I heard a bunch of different things, and I mean you mentioned Aerosmith and what have you. If you were to describe the Blues Vultures to my viewers, how would you do that?
It's actually a style of music that does not fit in with any category right now. We are like this band that people scratch their heads about. Where do we fit this band into? Uh, they're not heavy metal. Uh, they're not. I don't know. Radio oriented. We are just a band who, like I said, recreate what I took from the blues and early rock and roll. I mean, it's not all just the blues too. I mean, I go into I'm a big fan of the Beatles and the Stones, of course, and Jimi Hendrix, uh, Aerosmith, the early Alice Cooper band. Uh, Around 1972, there's an explosion of glam glitter rock. I love David Bowie, Ziggy Stardust, Mick Ronson, Slade. What a kick-ass band! Can I say that? I'm sorry, I did.
Absolutely, absolutely.
But yeah, so my influences, I pretty much stick to my guns with that because until the day I die, that's what I'll keep playing is roots rock and roll music, and that's what I would if to answer your question, it's roots rock and roll music based upon blues influences. It's blues rock, really. I know that the name has been deceiving to some people. Oh, we like the blues. Yeah, well, we don't just play. Yeah, we do a couple blues songs, but we don't just play that. It's blues rock. It just the name the Blues Rock Vultures didn't sound as good as the Blues Vultures. Um, say this too. A friend of mine, he's a very proficient drummer, and he plays with. I'll name drop. He plays with Slash, and he played on a CD I made back in 1998 out in Los Angeles when I first met him. His name's Brent Fitz. He's
Yeah,
like my
Canadian boy.
yes, he's like my favorite drummer on the planet. And he was at a convention. Where was it in Vegas? And he said he was wearing a Blues Vultures t-shirt. We're talking 20 years, well, 15 years ago. That's how long this band's been together. And
Well,
he ran into Billy Gibbons, and Billy Gibbons says, Blues Vultures, cool name. And I was like, that's cool to hear, Anyway, for what it's worth.
very cool. So I want to go back a little bit because you talked about not being the guy that's going to be on the Facebook page and what have you. And so your former band, here's what I remember about your former band. I remember being in Halifax and getting like Hit Parader and Circus, and there used to be these real cool advertisements for a band that was selling their record, and I was just like, very cool. And then there was bands that used to come up here to play in Halifax that knew you guys because they were like from Raleigh, North Carolina, and some of them were from the DC area. And I kept hearing about this band, and then I'd see these things, and then all of a sudden it's like, boom, to your point, you're wrapped up in this hair metal thing.
We,
Where do you
yeah.
think Kick's place in history sits? Because I mean, you guys just wrapped it up after a very long career, but where do you think your band sits in that whole thing?
A hard rock band. That's what we were. We weren't heavy metal. We were in the beginning. We were kind of just. It started out with I worked with Donnie Purnell with a couple other guys before we started what became Kicks with Brian. I worked with him and a different singer and guitar player from Pittsburgh. And the music, the first song I ever played with Donnie is a song on the first record called Atomic Bombs. And it was very riff, kind of Aerosmithy sounding to me. And so were a lot of his first songs that he wrote, which attracted me to what he wrote. And that's why when I was 20 years old, I was tired of playing in cover bands all my teens. I think I was in one original band when I was 17. Then another guy wrote the songs, which was kind of cool. But I left a band I was in that I was making decent money for being 19 years old to start a band with Donnie because I knew he wrote good songs. And I recognized that. And the first songs were very blues rock oriented, like very Aerosmithy sounding. And that attracted me. And a couple of guys that we started with didn't work out. We were so poor, we couldn't afford to keep them coming back and forth from Pittsburgh, 100 miles where we live. And I told Donnie, I said, I know a guitar player. His name's Brian Forsyth from my hometown. He was on the north side of town. I was on the south side of town. Him and I would go see each other's bands. And we moved in Brian's basement. We had a different drummer and singer for the first couple of years. We were called The Shoes, Shooze. It was that era where it was kind of a transitional era from the hard rock bands of the early 70s into almost a punk, kind of a new wave era. And I think the name Donnie, I think the drummer actually named the band. We had two Donnies, Donnie the Purnell, the bass player, who wrote the songs, and Donnie Spence, who was the drummer. I think he named the band The Shoes. I wasn't crazy about the name, but it was our name for like the first 3 years. And after a couple of years, we found Steve Whiteman, and then we got Jimmy, the drummer, Jimmy Chalfant. And that's what became Kicks by 1980. And we had been opening for a band in Baltimore. They were called Face Dancer. And their manager had gotten them a record deal on Capitol. They had great songs, great band. And he shopped our cassette around to the record labels. And then the A&R man from Atlantic came to hear us in Southern Maryland. And within a couple of weeks, we're up auditioning at SIRO Studios in New York City for the record company. And that's we did our first record. We got signed and did our first record. It was released in 1981, just titled Kicks. And but yeah, that we were just a hard rock band that just happened to go into, by 1985, with our third record, Midnight Dynamite, we were opening for bands that became like we opened for Guns N' Roses in Los Angeles, touring our third record. And our management got us on that bill because he had heard they were selling out the clubs in Los Angeles, and they hadn't released Appetite for Destruction yet. But when I got done playing, I went down to see them from the dressing room, and I was just blown away. These guys were like 10 years younger than us. And I mean, I stood right in front of Slash. He's probably 18 years old or something. And just amazing guitar player and great songs. And the singer just reminded me of a male version of Janis Joplin or something. It was just amazing. And the songs and the drumming and the bass player, everything was so tight. And the rhythm guitar player, Izzy Stradlin, it was just amazing to hear that band. So we started to get lumped in with those bands, which is not a bad thing. And I respect and love the music of Guns N' Roses. And there are quite a few bands I like from the 80s, but they're more like the roots rock and roll bands like Dogs to More. And then when I like the later Cult uh, like Love Removal Machine, the more raw sounding Cult, and then Lenny Kravitz came out, and I know I'm missing a few, but yeah, that's we were a hard rock band, and that's what we were, and we stuck to our guns. Maybe the second record, which I didn't play on, was kind of new waveish sounding. Had keyboards on it, but there were some really good songs. As I call them, Donnie's Golden Eggs. For Shame was on that record, Mighty Mouth, and Restless Blood. Um, at that time, uh, I've had a history of drug addiction and alcoholism, and at that time, I was not, I wasn't interested in the songs that were being presented for the second record. I loved the first record and what it was all about, but when it started up with the second record, I just didn't understand the lack of drive that the songs were lacking. And I got, I was not, I don't know, I lost interest. I was showing up late, like a half hour late for rehearsals, which you do not do. And we were a very tight knit band. We were very structured. Everything was on time, and I got fired for being late and not being prepared. I refused to learn a song called "Get Your Monkeys Out," which is on the second. I could not learn that. I just would not play it, and but it was a good thing in respect that a friend of ours, Brad Divins, took my place for 6 months. I moved out west, and met the guys in Motley Crue. They were just starting out. They were doing their own little shows, not little, but 2,500 people would show up. But they made their own stage props, and I respected that. Kind of reminded me of what we did in the Kicks band, and I feel that they took a knife and put it through the heart of new wave. They got rid of it. They paved the way for the rest of us to play hard rock music through the 80s. I truly believe that. Them and Guns N' Roses. So we
Well,
were
and you guys had a great run. Definitely had a great run. There's no question.
yeah.
So and obviously now you have more time to focus on your new, well, not your new project, because you said it's over a 20-year-old band. So what are your plans for the rest of this year in terms of that? I mean, it's hard to believe 2024 is, we're halfway through it, right? What do you plan on doing, Ronnie, with the rest of the year and that band?
First and foremost is staying sober and clean. I have 3 years and what's today? 4 months and a couple days of sobriety. I had 21 years at one point in my life, and some prescription drugs led me back out, plus a lot of excuses. And it took me a long time to get back, almost 10 years.
Congratulations, sir.
Thank you. And it's the only way. So that's first and foremost. Secondly is my kids and my family. Third is rock and roll. And rock and roll saves my soul, like one of the lines in the songs. It really does. And you're a musician, and I'm sure you understand that. And so our plans are, we're playing August 17th at a place called the Racehorse Tavern in Pennsylvania. Then we play near Baltimore at a place called McAvoy's on the 30th of August. Then we head out west, and we're playing at the Whiskey A Go-Go on September 6th. And then we're going to Vegas the night after that to play Counts Vamped in Vegas. And I'm looking forward to that. We come back, then we have a show in Annapolis, Maryland at the Ram's Head on Stage, it's called. And I'm looking forward to all this and hopefully selling our CDs. Plus, we're going to release it on.
And so when? I'm sorry.
We're also going to release our CD on vinyl. It's been mastered for vinyl, and they're being ordered right now as we speak.
So love the fact that there's hard copy, because it's like I'm one of those guys. I've started collecting vinyl again. It's nice to hear that needle, on the turntable, and and you would relate to this too, trying to figure songs out in the day, like you'd have to try to figure out how to get that arm down to 16 RPMs with a roll of quarters or something. People don't understand that these days, right? But where can my viewers find out about getting the CDs and getting the vinyl and what have you?
It would be the Blues Vultures bandcamp.com, bluesvultures.bandcamp.com. And that is where you can get our CDs. We have Blues Vultures Facebook page, but the Bandcamp is where to get the CDs. And I would like to send you a couple hard copies, if I may. And
that'd be awesome.
And also a record when we get them.
Would you mind if I did a review on my my YouTube with it?
Oh, I would. Absolutely. It'd be great if you did.
I'd be happy, because what I heard I really like. To me it's everything now just sounds so processed and so I don't want to say perfect, because maybe that implies that the music is sloppy, and it's not, but it's got a vibe that it's missing today. Like, everything's just so corporate. And I could just, I was listening to it. I had a vision of you guys like in a basement putting this stuff together. The vibe was just so cool.
That's actually where a lot of it was recorded. Like, I did most of my guitars right downstairs, because all my old Fenders and Marshalls are down there, and my guitars. And we did the drums 10 miles from here in the engineer's home, drums in his living room, and did all the vocals there. But I did most of the guitar. I did rhythm guitars there, but I did a lot of solos and fills here. Rich, the other guitarist, he did all his guitars at the studio 10 miles from here at the engineer's home. And then Clifford, our bass player, he has a medical condition. He was only able to play on track 2, which is called Electric Stars. God bless him. He's doing better. We've had a couple hired bass players playing with us. We're hoping that Clifford will return with us at some point. So I played the bass on the rest of the record. I did all that downstairs too, in my little studio room where we practice as well. So you're absolutely right. It was done in the basement.
Love it, man. Love it. And you know what? I'm glad you gave the shout out to Brent, because I haven't had him. I haven't met Brent, but Todd Kearns was on my show a number of years ago. He's another Canadian band guy. I'll tell you a really quick story. I moved to Toronto from Nova Scotia in 1993. And the first band that I saw ever in Toronto was Age of Electric, and Todd Kearns was fronting it. And I remember going, like, that was my first night in Toronto, and I'm going, yeah, man, if this is where the bar's at, we got to work our ass off, because that guy was just super talented. And same for Brent. And I have another connection, because I know Mr. Matt Starr filled in for Jimmy there when Jimmy was a little under the weather. So very cool, man. It's the networking thing, right? You can't get around it.
Yeah, that's great. And that's all. And I think that's all a beautiful thing. And I don't like to dismiss any of the networking. It's just I'm not very good with the whole Facebook thing, and I don't quite get it, for me anyway. That's just me. But yeah, and I've seen Todd play, of course, with Brent, with Slash, and he's very talented. I watched some of the videos that with Brent and Todd as well, and it's really great. So I agree totally. Great talent.
Well, and you know what, Ronnie? There's nothing wrong with the old school pen and paper and a scribbler to have your list of phone numbers and email addresses in. And I think sometimes people lose sight of that. Well, look what happened the other day with Microsoft going down, and banks and airplanes, and the whole world shut down for a day and a half. Even like social media, like YouTube and Spotify, and some of those numbers haven't reported and stuff. So it's nothing wrong with the old school way of doing things, my friend.
Right. I'm glad that you recognize that, and I totally endorse that whole idea.
Well, I do too. Look, I want to really thank you for doing this here in the Rock Rage Radio Network. It's great to meet you. I will definitely flip you my my address, because I'd happily do a review for that stuff. And hey, if you guys ever get up to Canada, let me know, man, because I'd love to get out and see you.
Oh, I can't wait. I would love to come to Canada and play. Kicks played in Toronto a couple times, and we had a great time there. It was a long time ago, 30 years ago. It was all good, and we had a blast. I would love to come to Canada and play. Absolutely.
Look forward to that. Ronnie, thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, Sean. It's been a pleasure, and I'm grateful to you for having me on your show.